Before we get into this episode, I wanted to introduce one of the partners for the show, Move Pre-Workout. I've been using this over the last year and can massively see the benefit with all my training. And I thought I'd invite Tom along, who was involved in the formulation.
Cheers, Mark. Obviously delighted to be supporting the podcast. And so Move Pre-Workout, we've got a strength-based formula, but this one is specifically designed for endurance athletes. And it's one of the first of its kind. We're just focusing on really high-quality ingredients that are going to benefit endurance performance of any kind. So, yeah, we're really excited by the product and delighted to be supporting podcasts like yourself.
Oh, it's amazing. And this is something that you're specifically taking before your training, before your rides, to be in best possible shape. I'd encourage you to give it a try. Go to movepreworkout.com and for a 20% discount, put the word endurance in at checkout. On with the show. Welcome back to the Endurance Podcast series. Well, I hope I'm welcoming you back. If this is the first episode you've tuned into, then there's a lot more to catch up on. The first series was audio only. You might well be watching this on YouTube. Apparently half of the world is now watching podcasts. I don't know who this half of the planet is. I don't have time to watch. I tend to be on the bike, out for a run, taking the dog for a walk, but it is a ton of fun filming the Endurance Podcast series in the real world rather than being virtual. It gives us the opportunity to do some epic rides. We've been recently to Gran Canaria, north of Scotland, and Mallorca, with lots more planned now for 2026. But for this episode, we're at I've completely lost the name of the show.
Adventure Travel Show
Adventure
London.
Travel Show, thank you very much. Adventure Travel Show in Islington, London. There's a lot of hustle bustle going on around us.
It's very noisy.
Thankfully, these microphones are doing a very good job so you can actually hear us into the future. And for this episode, we've got Mr. Angus Young, one of the UK's best known adventure cyclists, racers, gravel, mountain bike, you name it. Somebody who I've had the pleasure to ride with just once on arguably one of the toughest gravel events in the UK, Land's End John O'Groats off-road, mainly off-road on GB Duro. But that's the only time that we've actually met in anger on our bikes. The rest of the time is just at events like this. So bringing Martin into the conversation and then Angus, I think we're going to learn a lot from this conversation because you're a man who's actually done a version of what we're about to do this summer, go the length of Europe. So why don't we start there? And I think, Martin, over to you.
Yeah, so for those watching and not just listening, if you are listening, I'll have to describe it. There's a map behind Mark of the bike ride that we're going to do this summer in July, going from Nordkapp to Tarifa. It's 6,000 kilometres. And we're going to do it as a group of 4 and set a group world record to cycle the length of Europe. Angus, you have done a version of this. I was watching some of your stuff on YouTube yesterday as I was on the bike in the gym, actually a bit further, and I've got a quote that I found quite inspiring before you set off. That looks amazing. I wonder how fast it can be done. I didn't need to be fast. I just need to be able to pedal for 16 to 18 hours every day. That's relatively easy. And there, see all the emojis that I put on the end of that. That's relatively easy. So I thought, that's good news.
Yeah,
was it relatively
easy?
easy?
It wasn't easy.
Was that quote before or after you did it?
I think that was a quote, must have been before. Because I don't think I would have said that after.
It's a very good quote.
Yeah.
So let's start there.
Well, it's because when you... I don't know, I have a bit of an issue sometimes with underestimating some of the challenges that I'm going to do. So talking about the length of Europe, so the route I did was called the European Divide Trail, and it was just shy of 8,000 kilometres, but it was all off-road, and it was a fixed route. We'll say all off-road, as much off-road as you can. Fixed route. I'd been led to believe that it was going to be, all these beautiful, pristine gravel tracks and, wonderful rolling terrain and things. But in reality, the route ended up being a lot harder than I was expecting it to be. And I underestimated it. But thankfully, bloody mindedness can go a long way in these things. I managed to get through it, just about. So it took me 32 days to do the distance and a bit of change, which was 16 to 18 hours a day. And I wasn't fast, really. A chap the year after me, he set out to try and set a record as well. And he was riding the same distance I was doing every day, but he was doing it in 11 or 12 hours instead of 16 or 18. But he gave up after a week or so, because his strategy, didn't quite prove to be right because he was trying to be fast.
He went too fast.
He went too fast,
right.
yeah, too fast, and then longer recovery, which should help you.
He was aiming to do it faster every day, but shorter time, but cover the same distance in a shorter time and go fast. Oh wow!
So he was ultimately he's a faster cyclist than me.
Yeah.
And he packed a bit lighter, and rode harder, pushed the pedals more, but it only worked out so well for him. So,
but let's go straight to that, because that's a really interesting point. So, in the world of ultra endurance, define that as you will, but something that lasts for over a week. It's not just about how hard and fast you can ride your bike. It's ultimately about recovery to do the same thing the next day, the next day, the next day. And I've noticed over the last 10 years, people trying lots of different strategies. And when people try different strategies, lots of people then copy them. So, I mean, I remember when I did the Cairo to Cape Town world record, a few years later, a group tried to break that record, albeit they were going for the group. They did the first half in exactly the same time, riding much faster, but then because some of them got heat stroke in the Sahara Desert, it all averaged out. And it's that hare and the tortoise. Do you get more recovery? Do you ride harder? Do you sleep more? How do you now think about riding sustainably, and has your approach to that changed over the years?
It's a difficult one because it just takes so much trial and error, doesn't it? So I think, I've done maybe 20, 25 of these events, some, 30, 40 day events, some of them. And I think I've settled on, if I can get 4 hours every night sleeping, I know that's pretty sustainable. It's not easy, but, 4 hours, if I could do 18 hours riding, 4 hours sleep and a bit of faff time in between, and I can sustain that, as long as I've had to so far, which is, 40 days has been my longest. But it took me quite a while to settle on that, I think. When I set out on the European Divide Trail, I was trying to really do like 3.5. All it was, I'd do 4 hours stop time to start with, and that really wasn't quite enough for me. And I really pushed hard through Scandinavia, and then just really sort of collapsed. I got to the ferry, so I took the ferry from Gothenburg to Friedrichshafen, and just completely conked out in this mad ferry, just sleeping like with all these people around me. And I sort of realised that point.
So pause on that. You were hallucinating?
Yeah. So I'd booked my ferry maybe a little bit too early, so I realised I had to really push to be able to make it in time because I didn't want to miss it. So the first 10 days or 9 days of my trip, I did 3,200k. Which is, 330k a day, which compared to my overall average, which ended up being about 250, was a lot higher because
This is gravel.
This is gravel, yeah. It was faster gravel. The Norwegian gravel and Swedish gravel was really fast, but I went out pretty hard, and it's maybe because I had quite learned how much I had to, how much recovery I really needed and to look after my body. But that allowed me to sort of open up a little bit of a gap on the target pace so I could relax into it a little bit more after that, which is another strategy in itself. Building a bit of a buffer mentally can be a really helpful thing, I find. If you've got up over that time, that predicted time, you've got a little bit of slip if something goes wrong.
But if you go out too hard, a lot of people the adaptation, the physical adaptation to ultra endurance, you can be trained as much as you want, but nothing in training allows you to ride 18 hours a day. So if you're going to injure, you're going to get some repetitive strain injury, or there's going to be an issue, it's going to happen in those first 2 to 3 to 4 days. So there's a fine balance, isn't it, between going out fast and not overcooking it to the point. It's nice to put some miles in the bank, but the risk is you don't allow for that time for the bodily adaptation to actually get that sustainable state. Because I always find the first week, the second half of the first week's always the hardest. The honeymoon period's gone, the excitement from the first couple of days, but then once you're into the second week, you're like, okay, I can keep doing this now.
Yeah, once it sets into you after a couple of days, I was like, I've still got a bloody long way to go. I've got to do this for another however many days, and however long it is, it seems like a long way. But I remember, that first night, I'd, gone out, like the clappers, as you always do. You're excited and everything. And I remember my knees. I got into my bivvy bag, and my knees were just killing me so much. I was like, I've never had like knee pain, but it was just from the strain. And yeah, again, you just not you can do so much training, but you can't prepare like your muscles for it so much.
The conditioning.
So, yeah, the conditioning, exactly. But after that, they sort of got used to it. Like, I wasn't worried about it. It wasn't like worried it was a tear, but it was just like joint pain. Bit of ibuprofen and crack on.
And was it entirely self-supported? Just on your own the entire journey from start to finish?
I think I maybe saw half a dozen dot watches en route. And yeah, just my own thoughts for 32 days, which was quite fun.
How many pairs of shorts did you take?
Just the one. Yeah, one pair of shorts, one jersey. I started off with one pair of socks as well.
Seriously?
And that got me through the first 10 days. And
Wow.
I was like, why haven't I got two pairs of socks? So I think one pair of shorts is fine. I'm pretty comfortable going into like a petrol station like toilet and like washing it in the sink and stuff and sticking it on back wet again.
Right. That sounds awful. That sounds absolutely horrendous.
But again, you get used to that.
Yeah.
Because I find that when I've done things with two pairs of shorts, it doesn't actually...
Doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, you have a clean pair of shorts for like a day, and then
Yeah.
what difference does it make, really? You still need to find somewhere to wash them.
Then
So-
you've just got two dirty
Then
pairs
you've
of
got
shorts.
two dirty pairs of
Yeah,
shorts.
right. True. And how about food then? So when I've done the longer ones over the past couple of years, I've always had support, like a camper or a car or someone. You know, for a day or two, it's fine. But how do you go about food and carrying enough food and then replenishing and making sure you can get the right nutrition? Do you stop at a supermarket or what do you do?
Yeah, you just sort of stop where you can, really. Because often out, like in, Scandinavia, I was doing like 400 kilometers between resupplies, and you get to a town and there'd be one shop. And
Yeah.
you go in there and you find what you can. You try and get a hot meal if you can. But it's not always that easy. So you just get whatever calories you can find.
Yeah. Did you ever get any of that tinned fermented fish?
I didn't know.
It's meant to be really nice.
Yeah,
meant to smell
heard
good.
that. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Probably not going to fuel you another 200k.
No.
It was funny, the gravel race that we did the length of the UK, there was always a real advantage being at the front of the field, because it meant that when the entire field of riders descended on some little village shop in the middle of the Highlands of Scotland, you got first dibs. And there was one store, I can't remember which village it was in, that there was big complaints from the back of the field because like we'd cleared out all the good stuff.
All the Snickers are gone.
All the Snickers, exactly. Other chocolate bars are available. It's so true. Like what you crave and what you need when you're like carrying your own kit is not always what you think you will, because there's some things which are going to get you down the road. And there's other things which is actually like, okay, it's an overnight, so I need to think about rationing for dinner and breakfast and getting through to that next point. And that's a totally different game, isn't it? When you're heading into sort of remote parts of the planet.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that's sort of shifted with me over the years. I used to effectively just think of like fuel in, like sugar down the tank, into the tank. And now I've started to realise I actually start getting quite hungry. So it's about thinking like what can satiate me well. So I started when I was doing a ride down America this year. I was like really making sure that I got at least like one like proper cooked meal a day, and then I'd like make sure I left with like enough sandwiches and things. Whereas in the past I might have just grabbed 2,000 calories worth of chocolate bars and sweets and then been like, right, this will get me through nice and quickly. But taking a little bit more time to get some, let's say real food. Petrol station food is only so good, but it's better than chocolate bars. Can help with that longevity, I think, and just keep you full, because I get quite hungry.
And what kind of sleeping conditions were you in? Did you have a tent with you? Did you sleep in any nice ditches, any public toilets, or did you get some hotels? Or
so European Divide, I just had a bivvy with me, which is I find the easiest way to go.
Yeah.
Because you can ride as long as you want, and then between 11 and 3, these trails are completely quiet. So you can just fall asleep on the trail, and you're not worried about anyone else coming up on you. So it was most convenient. But then, of course, like in the middle of summer, there's no darkness up in
Yeah,
North
right.
Norway.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, you have to think about sleeping with like a buff over your eyes or something, and you know, I didn't need to turn my lights on for the first like 2 weeks of the trip, which was.
How was that then? Would you wake up? So if you wake up in the night, obviously, generally it's dark and you know to try and go back to sleep. Would you wake up and it was light and you'd just be totally disorientated, or how did that go?
Yeah, it's a lot easier. Like, you hear about people going and doing like sled dog expeditions, and they trick the dogs into thinking they've had a full night's sleep because they wake up when it's light as well. And I felt a bit like that. You know, you wake up, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's bright sunshine.
So would you just crack on and ride, or would you try and go back to sleep?
No, you just crack on. Like, that's the alarm goes, and then you try and get on a bike as quickly as you can. You get into like a really dialed routine when you're like, I could be, you know, I'd stop for the night, and I'd be like asleep within 10 minutes. Alarm would go, and it'd be another 10 minutes, and I'd be up again.
Right.
Because, I wouldn't even like take my bib shorts off. And then it did, like, once I got towards the end, I got a bit more of a buffer. I did start to like get a little bit more sleep, focus a little bit more on hygiene, and spend a few more nights inside. I think I spent 5 nights inside over the course of the...
Inside where?
It's like a hotel or...
Okay, just whatever you could find.
Yeah, I slept in a museum at one point.
Okay.
Where else did I sleep? I was sleeping in a bus centre in Denmark, a bus stop. And some guy came out and was like, "Oh, do you want to sleep in my camper van? It's just parked outside my house." It was like, there's a shower in there, like, leave when you want.
Nice.
Yeah, and he didn't... It was exactly what I wanted at the end of the day, because sometimes you're doing these things and like these people are lovely, and they want to know what you're doing and everything. You can't blame them, but you just want to sleep and you just want them to leave you alone.
You don't. It's interesting if you go into people's houses and you start to sort of unwind and tell stories. I've struggled with this on big projects where actually you think that's amazing and some home comforts and stuff, but it's twice as hard to get back on the road the next day because you've been taken out of that mindset. Sometimes it's better just to stay in the wilderness.
Yeah. So he was just like, like, there's a camper up there, I've left it open, don't have to go in there, knock yourself out. I'm like, fantastic.
Was there any dark moments where you felt like you might want to quit or anything was going wrong? What was the darkest and where was the bottom?
I had a lot of mechanical issues coming through Germany.
Okay.
So for a start, I'd burned through a set of tyres in the last 4,000k. So went about 30k off route to try and find some mountain bike tyres, which was kind of expected. And then just as I was like leaving the city, I realised that I'd left my iPhone in some public toilets, went back, cycled about 10k, they'd gone, so I had to try and get another phone somewhere.
Oh, you lost your phone? You didn't get it back?
Yeah, lost my phone, never got it back. And then on the same day, I managed to snap my handlebars. The drops just snapped off at the shifter. I must have had a slow speed crash somewhere earlier, and it just cracked it, but I hit a bump and just the drop just completely came off.
Wow.
So then I was I managed to kind of get it to work because moving the shift around, but I was riding for that, and then my spoke started to go on my wheel, and then my front brake went. So now it was also Saturday, and the Germans don't like opening bike shops or anything on Sundays, and for some reason they also didn't like opening them on Mondays as well, where I was. So I ended up riding, must have been 600k with half a handlebar, with missing a bunch of spokes in the back and no front brake through this technical terrain over into France. And then eventually I got into the Duro and managed to find a shop who could sort me out. But because I built up a bit of a buffer, I knew that I kind of had the time.
And this was a buffer on the previous record?
Yeah. I had quite a big buffer on the previous record. My biggest time commitment was I had to get back for my brother's wedding.
Okay.
So I'd set this arbitrary figure of 35 days or something, which turned out to be a pretty realistic, I was a bit up on it, but a pretty realistic goal.
What about, you talked about a catalogue of issues. Have you built any tips or tricks or things to help you cope when things are against you? Everyone sort of talks about when it's going great, but given the amount of races you've done, and the amount of stuff you've had to deal with, is it just sort of suck it up, bit of like lived experiences, or is there actually anything that viewers and listeners can go, that's quite a useful way of thinking about it? Because grit and resolve and resilience is a great thing to talk about, but it's very hard to, hang your coat on. It's like, okay, great, how do I get that?
Yeah, I think like there's a certain amount of lived experience with it, and you do pick up these little like tips and tricks that you might have heard someone doing something. Like when I was racing out in America this year, my derailleur battery failed, and I heard of like one of my buddies, it happened to another person, who had taken apart a USB cable to get like a tiny bit of copper to like make the connections a bit better. And I thought at that time, I was like, right, I'll log that. Like that's something, if that happens to me, I'll be able to do that. So like I just sort of pulled that one out of the back pocket and like gave it a go, and it worked, and it got me to like
Amazing.
Exactly. So it's like picking up, like always having your ears out for people who've done things.
Little hacks.
Because you never know like when it's going to come in handy.
Especially now bikes are more complicated than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, the adage with bikes when I started 20 years ago was always like reliability, fixability, the fact that you could just fix it anywhere. Whereas now, a lot of modern bikes, it's like now you're choosing componentry, which, especially in a lot of places that you ride bikes, and I've ridden bikes, the local bike shop's not going to be able to fix it. So you really do need it to be very reliable, and if it doesn't...
Yeah, and I think a lot of modern components are very reliable, but they're not fixable.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And like, you're probably going to, compared to components from 20 years ago, I reckon you're less likely to break down on electronic gears, for instance.
Yeah, first time around the world, it had to be a metal frame, internal gearing, everything was about reliability. I didn't even, taking rim brakes, whereas now, obviously, it's all hydraulic brakes and Di2 and whatever else that might be. Amazing, but you've got to...
Sometimes you're just stuffed if it fails. Whereas with mechanical stuff, you can always sort of budge it to keep moving.
And talking about global adventures, we're lucky to catch you because you're just back from South America. You're just about to head off to New Zealand. So, what are you up to at the moment? You've not been racing. You've been taking life easy.
Yeah. So in July, I quit my job teaching. I say quit my job. Well, I did, but a bit of a career break. Spent a bit more time riding bikes, and my wife has taken a sabbatical. So we spent 3 months down in South America, touring at like a nice relaxed pace. So we flew out to Bogota, Colombia, and then just sort of wound our way down south, down the Andes, trying to take in as much off-road mountain biking as we could, really. And it was a real nice change from racing, because you can actually stop and look around and have a chat with people and do a little detour, and then if something goes wrong, it doesn't always matter that much. You can thumb a lift to a town and take your time, get it sorted, as opposed to having to, be a little bit chaotic and just bloody minding this your way through it.
And I mean, I'm not sure Nikki, if she ever watches or listens to this, would ever go on a 3-4 month bikepacking expedition with me, but any hints or tips for going on a big exped with your wife or husband or whoever?
Meg's pretty hardy, and she puts up with a lot of me, and I find sometimes I find it difficult not to go into like teacher mode or like trip leader mode. But yeah, I do end up just sort of planning a lot, and she's just sort of is very long suffering and will very happily just follow along with what I'm doing. But it's like any things in relationships, just communication, isn't it? And even like a lot of non-verbal communication, you can pick up when someone's tired pretty easily, especially if they're your partner.
It's such a cool thing to do together. I don't think it's ever going to happen in my world.
I don't think there's a chance of it. Is your plan to go back into teaching, or what does the future hold?
Yeah, when I run out of money, I'll go back into
when
teaching.
When you're out of money, okay. How long have you got?
We'll see. Depends how many sponsors I can pick up.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so the last sort of 5 years or so, I've sort of been saving up, and my profile's been growing a little bit, and 5-6 years of teaching was enough I realised that I can do something else for a little bit.
But it's actually interesting because that's what Neil said. We had Neil Lawton on the podcast earlier, and he was saying this idea of you've got to do adventures as you live your life. You can't store up your life to then do adventures, and he's managed to punctuate his entire working career with adventures, and it was such a cool message, don't you think?
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's probably how I'm going to end up playing things.
He funds his adventures through his work, pretty much is how he was describing it, wasn't he? But then his work were his adventures too.
Yeah. The Endurance Podcast is brought to you in partnership with Enjoy Travel. Huge thanks for all that they do. And I don't need to introduce my co-host, but over to Martin Mansell to explain Enjoy Travel.
So Enjoy Travel brings you car hire, hotels, airport parking lounges with a loyalty platform, meaning you buy 9, you get your 10th free. And you can mix and match across any range of our products. You don't need to just buy 10 car hire, you could buy a hotel, a car hire. And we're giving you a special discount code to celebrate our podcast, which is RID3R, as in rider, and you'll get up to 30% off everything.
So click on Enjoy Travel. It's been amazing for these epics, makes our travel so much more enjoyable and seamless. So thanks Martin, thanks Enjoy Travel. Tell us what's on the horizon. You're about to head out to New Zealand. What's in store?
Yeah, so the big goal out in New Zealand is racing the Tour Te Waipanamu, which is a 1,400 kilometre mountain bike race down the middle of the South Island.
Yeah.
So it's sort of one of the most technical ultra distance events there is out there.
Right.
And it's really remote, and a lot of it's on private land as well. So it doesn't really get an opportunity to be ridden much.
No.
Because it's closed, and the event only happens every other year. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
So for those in the UK, what would be the closest comparison? Something like the Highland Trail 550?
Yeah, probably something like the Highland Trail 550,
Okay.
which is
Hardcore.
yeah, pretty hardcore.
And are you motivated? I see you very much as an events guy, but equally, there are quite a wide variety of sort of gravel mountain biking all over the planet. What motivates you? Are you trying to figure out something about yourself? Are you trying to win the race? I mean, both would be nice, but whereas I'm somebody who spent my life doing expeditions, you're somebody who spent your career entering some of the world's hardest races.
Yeah.
I've only ever done one, and it was with you. So what motivates you?
I always find it very difficult to explain where my motivation actually comes from, because a lot of the time it's just I'll see something and think, oh, that looks really fun, and I'm quite a competitive person as well.
I saw that.
So I always like beating people, and I think that's a lot of it does come from that. And it's if I see someone's done something, it's not like I'm trying to one up them, but maybe I see a little way that they could improve on it, or something that they might have missed, and I think that's an opportunity for me to show my stripes a little bit there.
I can imagine you as a teacher going, kids, it's the taking part that counts, and then in your private life you're like, I'm going to win.
I think people these days, some people are quite scared to put themselves out there, to be seen as competitive, to want to, because I really enjoy winning races, and that might seem like an obvious thing to say and quite self-centered, but ultimately, it's a really nice feeling winning races, and the process of planning everything to a T, preparing yourself, and then when it all comes together, and it's not always winning. I've had loads of races that I've been really, pleased with the outcome and not necessarily won. But I like that process of coming up with an idea, planning for it, and then, hopefully it comes out. And that's that little bit at the end that you get is a really nice feeling.
Yeah, it's the reward, isn't it?
Yeah. And then working in teaching, it is really nice when I have students or ex-students coming up to me and saying how they followed my adventures and races.
Yeah.
And and that's again, because it feels nice when someone comes up to you and say you have inspired them.
Yeah.
It's a really nice feeling. So there's definitely a part of me that likes doing that as well.
I like the honesty. You're very straightforward. I like winning, and I like the recognition from winning, and it's okay to say that.
Yeah. And it is also fun. Even intrinsically, I love riding my bike. in wild places and not even less wild places. There's something there as well, like in places that people might not necessarily see in that light as a bit adventurous. Just doing long rides around the UK, or people might not think of that as an adventurous destination, but you can have an adventure, anywhere really.
Yeah. Well, we've got Marcus Stitz helping us with the filming today, and our project in lockdown was Explore Your Boundaries. It was the idea of within 10 miles of where you live, how do you find home in an unfamiliar way? How do you see new parts of the stuff which is right on your doorstep? You don't have to go to the Atacama Desert to have an adventure. So that was the whole ethos. Shout out to Marcus, who's filming right now. Right over to you, Martin. We've got a lot of experience here in terms of ultra endurance. Obviously, what we're doing, Race Europe, is road. You've done quite a lot of road. I mean, you're more of a gravel off-road guy. Yeah. But now that we're in the year that it's going to happen, it's funny because when we were filming the endurance podcast series throughout the autumn, it was always next year, whereas now it's this year. It seems like it's pretty damn
close,
real now.
Isn't it? It's pretty close now. So yeah, we're going to be looking to average 350 kilometers a day, probably. Yeah. The route's changed a little bit due to the world record parameters. It's got a little bit longer, so it just needs rerouting a little bit. But have you got any kind of like top tips for that kind of? It's road, not gravel. There'll be hopefully no off-road. But have you got any top tips for those kinds of distances, day after day after day?
It's about just finding your routine, I think. And once you've it takes a couple of days or more. But once you're sort of settled into that routine, then you sort of know what to expect every day, and you start to be able to just tick off those little milestones that you have every day, whether it's to make it to your morning break or whatever. They always say, typical things, they make the goals smaller, right? Break it down into little steps. But it does work. It genuinely works. And you just focus on it day by day by day.
Would you have any kind of strict routine when you were doing the big one across Europe to say, right, I'm going to aim to stop every 3 hours for no more than 15 minutes, or did you just go with your feel, go with how you felt?
Yeah, it's on the off-road stuff. It's or necessarily off-road, but bits where when you're self-supported and there's less opportunity of resupply, it's harder or the routine's going to be different. So I'd wake up in the morning and then I'd try and find ideally somewhere to have breakfast and a coffee, mid-late morning.
Yeah.
And that would be my first little stop, and then I'd try and find somewhere late afternoon or like when the sun was going down to have sort of my dinner stop, and I'd maybe break it into 3 separate sections. But it doesn't always work like that. But even just like the little routines as well, like when you're getting into bed, like everything, I don't know, you get it so dark so quickly, and you can just settle into it, and you don't really even need to think. There were times when, like not on the European divide, because on the longer ones, the sleep deprivation, it's a different style. Like you're more like fatigued, as opposed to like when you have like acute sleep dep and you haven't slept for a couple of days. That's when you start getting like the squirrely hallucinations. Whereas I find with the longer ones, when you've been going like a month and 4 hours, I don't know what your experience with that is, but I don't find like I get the hallucinations or anything on the longer ones. It's more if you go a couple of days without sleeping. But I have found myself on shorter rides, essentially not really knowing what's going on for a little bit. And then next thing you know, you're waking up at 3 a.m. in your sleeping bag with your alarm going off, and you've just autopiloted like into bed, stuck an alarm on, and then you're good to go the next day, sort of.
I think it's funny, those shorter rides where you're sort of riding to fail, it might only be 2 or 3 days, like I don't know, the North Coast 500 record. It's amazing what you can do when you focus. I know it's a poor analogy, but if you've had 5 pints and then suddenly you need to act sober, you can do for about 5 minutes. Yeah. But you can't do it for that. You can't do it for that long. Like if you have to like switch it on.
Yeah. 5 pints and I'm asleep. I'm crawling to bed.
But it's so true. Like sleep depth's the same. So if you've not done sleep depth, just have 5 pints. But my point being, if you have to switch it on, you can, but you can't hold it for very long. Yeah. Whereas when you're doing the stuff which is like compounding, you're doing it for days and days and weeks. The worst I've probably had is ocean rowing, when we were sleeping we were doing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 hours on, 2 hours off for a month, so you never really slept for more than an hour and a half for a month, and it just did weird things. The trick I've always thought with hallucinations is they're actually quite fun and entertaining as long as you know that they are hallucinations. You're in trouble when you don't know they're hallucinations. I remember being in the middle of the Atlantic rowing along and looking at forests, and I was trying to hold on to them because they were so much more interesting than just looking out at the water. I was really enjoying the forest, but I was aware enough to know that they weren't really there. And so that was sort of like a state of mind where I was going slightly doolally. But I always think you go to slightly idiot mode where, like, all of your emotions are just a little bit frayed. Like your tolerance for things going wrong, or that's why it's almost sometimes better to be on your own when you're sleep deprived, because there's nobody else to piss you off. You know, you're just... you can deal with your own stuff, but it's quite hard to deal with others.
Yeah. Now you mentioned I've never actually spent a long time sleep deprived in the company of others.
Yeah.
And that might explain why my go-to hallucination is, this might say something really dark and deep about my psyche, but I'll hallucinate that I'm just like on a group ride with a bunch of people. And there are just all these people around me, just like having a chat with them, like in my mind.
But that's great, because that's what you're craving.
Yeah, exactly. It must say a lot about me. And yeah, so, but yeah, it's wild.
I mean, obviously, the whole topic of endurance as a podcast series is to inspire people, but also to inform people. We're trying to share greatest hits, and some of the stuff you've done is amazing. If you've not come across Angus before, please do check out a lot of the races and events you've taken part of, some of the other conversations you've had. But it's also genuinely to share that information which might help people get out there. And even if talking about hallucinations might be a bit of fun, knowing that if you do find yourself in that place, that not to normalize it, but the fact that it is something that does happen as your mind gets used to doing these things, and clearly operating safely in these environments comes top of the pile. How to look after yourself when you're pushing yourself this hard. But, you know, learning from others who have done it before so that you go to that place and it doesn't scare the hell out of you is pretty important as well. I mean, we saw that in GB Duro when, you know, I can't remember how many of us left from Land's End. You know, the best part of 60 riders, 13 got to John O'Groats? So that fascinates me. Like, why did 40 people stop riding their bikes? And it wasn't because their bikes broke. It was because, you know, the hardship of the ride, you know, stopped them riding the road in front of them. And that's what fascinates me ultimately, because, you know, it's not normally the physical ability that gets you through, is it?
Yeah. And again, it's just, yeah, bloody-mindedness. I keep on saying it goes a really long way. Like, you set your goal on something, and you need to, in those moments, think, like, why it is you're doing it. And, like, is the situation you find yourself in, is it a dangerous situation, or is it just a little bit uncomfortable and you can press yourself through it? And I've pulled out of races and events before because I've, at that time, thought I was in a dangerous situation. When reality, with hindsight, I probably could have got through it. Like, I probably would have been okay, and it was just a little bit uncomfortable. But in that, like, state of mind you're in at the time, it's very easy to take the easy option.
Yeah.
And it's about sort of riding that edge, they always say, of, like, you know, where are you? Is it uncomfortable? Is it dangerous? And the more experience you have in these things, the more you can find exactly where that point is. And people do cross it, unfortunately.
Oh, of course. And the advantage, I guess, we'll have this summer, but slightly stepping into the unknown, is we'll be a group supporting each other. So you're not just dealing with your own. But in one sense, it should be easier because, you know, we can hold the wheel, we can support each other, but also we're going to see each other at our absolute best and, frankly, at our absolute worst as well. We've got to be, that psychological roller coaster is going to be different for each of us. So, you know, when I'm up, you're down, and vice versa. And it's going to be fascinating as a group of four of us, Jenny Graham, Hamish Graham and Martin, to see how four people with completely different riding experiences come together for a 6,000 kilometre epic.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, by far the biggest thing I'll have ever done. 3 times bigger than this year's ride. How do you go about training for something like that then on your personal level? So the 7.5 or 7,800 kilometre ride across Europe, did you have a coach? Did you do gym work? Did you do cardio work? Or did you just ride and ride and ride and ride?
Yeah, you can get almost all of the way by just riding as much as you can. Yeah. And you can only train so much, right? But yeah, I did have a coach at the time, I think, yeah. And yeah, a lot of strength work in the gym.
Oh, you did a lot of strength
the
work
more
in the
and
gym.
more like I train, the more I realise how important it is. And it doesn't need to be complicated strength work in the gym.
Yeah.
Like any plan you can find online is going to be helpful. Just as long as it's working like your main muscle groups, it's going to really help.
Can you give us some specifics what you would do in the
Yeah.
gym?
So essentially, I'd mainly focus on squats and deadlifts. Ultimately.
Squats and deadlifts.
So I'd go.
Okay.
I'd do 2 gym sessions a week. I'd warm up on like a watt bike, do a couple of sprints on that, and then my main effort, I'd either start with squats or deadlifts, and then I'd do like some auxiliary things after that, and then I'd go into the other one, and then do some lunges, and then a little bit of upper body, and I'd just do like 3 to 4 sets of like 6 to 8 reps of like whatever weight felt like I could do 1 or 2 more for each of them, and you get stronger very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But the advice with the gym work is, if you haven't done any before, like go with someone who knows what they're doing, or if you don't know anyone like that, just get a personal trainer for a couple of sessions to show you how to lift weight properly, because the main thing is to get the movements right and get the form before you start shifting huge weight.
Movements, posture, position.
Yeah.
Usually not putting weight on the joints and the back.
Yeah.
Is your main motivation for the 2 sessions you would do in the gym, is it actually about being a better bike rider? Or is it about not injuring? Is it about...
No, it's what's through the pedals.
It's power.
It's power, yeah. There have been a load of studies, and I'm quite nerdy, so I read up on all of the science, but a lot of recent studies in the last 5 years that show that strength work is like just as effective as like interval work and can stack with it.
Okay.
So where they've done studies where people have just done like high intensity interval training or just done strength work or both, the people who do both,
So
and that's even like
So you would notice a
normalised
change in your
amount of time.
FTP based
Yeah.
off doing deadlifts?
Yeah, so I'm a one-person study, but the times when I've done like gym blocks, especially through the winter, it's like I found that later on in the spring type time, that's when I've seen like my FTP at the highest, ultimately, when I've had that consistency in the gym work and on top of the other training.
Because a lot of people think about flexibility, functional fitness, strength work as that conditioning.
Yeah.
As you get tired, not picking up injuries or niggles on the bike, strength work, especially around the joints. But it's interesting that you're seeing it first and foremost for performance.
Yeah.
Because let's all be honest, a lot of bike riders don't go to the gym.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to hear you with your experience prioritizing that for straightforward performance.
Yeah, I think there's around a lot of things, there's a lot of misinformation, isn't there? Cyclists are very we're quite weight concerned. Even if we're not shedding every gram, but we are concerned about our weight sometimes. And we think if we're going to go in the gym, we're going to get jacked and all these things. No one's ever gone into the gym and got too muscly. Who's ever gone into the gym and thought, I wish I wasn't quite as muscly after that? It just doesn't happen. People spend years and years and years to put on a bit of muscle. It's not going to happen by accident as a cyclist. And that's you might put on a tiny amount of muscle, but that's functional muscle that does a lot. And all of the extra bits like the flexibility, mobility, and bits that sort of stop you, injury prevention type things. That's a bonus for me, right? It's good to have, and that's why I do a little bit of upper body stuff and a few other more compound movements. But ultimately, squats and deadlifts. That's sort of that's your FTP going up there.
I love that. And the staying on weight is more about nutrition than it is about...
Yeah, it's music to my ears because I've always mixed gym work with the cycling, not just purely pushing out the distance, but filling the gaps with gym work. And a lot of people will say it's a waste of time, but I personally, when I started pushing out the distances, pushing it really out a couple of years ago, and bearing in mind it was following a quite bad knee injury, but I was getting a lot of pain around my hips. I was getting to points where I was really, I don't know if I can do this because I'm getting so much pain in my hips and around my back and around different parts, and I do feel the gym work ironed that out a lot and built the strength around the muscles in your legs. So I'm a believer in that as well, and it's good to hear someone else.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think especially because there's this really strange coming together in the last 10, 15 years of road cycling, gravel, which has always been there, but people seem to think it's new, and actually fell running, other disciplines, and that purist approach to whereas I consider myself just an adventure athlete. I want to have functional fitness and endurance to be able to turn my hand to a whole range of things, as long as it's not anything coordinated like football. So that sort of very linear view of, clearly I'm never going to win a fell running race, but I want to be fit enough to be able to turn my hand to that, and that sort of Puritan view of, I have to do one thing because it's sort of a zero-sum game. If I focus on this, I'm not going to be any good at that. I think most people listening to this just want to be able to show up, and yes, they might have an event in mind where they have to specialize for a while, but they just want to have a physicality and a psychology at the end of the day where they can have a great adventure, and the training that they do allows them to have a better adventure because they've put the work in. I think none of us are trying to win the Tour de France here, so we don't need to be that sort of one-dimensional about it.
I think so, and I think there is also a lot to be said. A lot of more and more athletes across various sports or disciplines, they are doing more cross-training. You're seeing more runners spending more time on a bike, and vice versa as well. So I think what it means to be a specialised athlete is definitely changing as well, because even if you're 100% focused on trying to run a super quick marathon time, the best way forward might be to spend a few hours in a week cycling as well.
And it's quite individual to who you are and the time pressures you've got. So a lot of people who are working, they simply can't put the hours in, so bang for buck within their training might look something completely different to yourself, who's giving yourself a sabbatical to train for the event. It's an awesome topic, and hopefully it gives people a bit of quiet confidence to sort of learn from others, but also not to be scared to try things out. Just because you've read a book and it tells you to do it one way doesn't mean that's the only way to show up and be able to take on the big event you've got. So you're about to head off to New Zealand. Beyond that, I'm sure there's going to be more races and adventures to follow. For those that are new to Angus Young, how do we find you? How do we follow you?
The best way is Instagram, probably. Just Angus Young 139.
Cool. And it's genuinely a pleasure to follow this guy and all the adventures you get up to. You're really good at sharing those stories. You're really candid around not just the successes but the failures, and I think that's important. And you've been doing it long enough now where, like you have been in this conversation today, bring that level of experience and honesty to the conversation. And there's a whole generation coming up behind us going, how do I do this? What does it look like? So keep doing what you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure since we met, 4 or 5 years ago, to keep up with your adventures. It's exciting to see you taking a bit of a career break and riding, with a real focus at this point. I can tell you're enjoying it.
Yeah, having a great time already.
And I think New Zealand's going to be a hell of a race to follow, so we wish you well out there.
Awesome, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome. And when we come to the summer, we might be giving you a call for any tips as we head to the Arctic.
100%, definitely.
Yeah, always there. Cool.
Thanks very much, Angus. Been a pleasure.
Well, a big thanks to Mr. Angus Young for an amazing conversation as he crams this visit back to the UK between an epic adventure out in South America with what is going to be a truly terrifying race out in the South Island, New Zealand, which we'll watch with great interest, and some real inspiration for the Europe ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Angus. It's a real pleasure meeting you. What a phenomenal bloke. Really interesting. You ride across Europe, really.
A teacher. He is a teacher. It's interesting to be good at what you do, but it's another thing to have the language to explain it. So I do think there's something about having a teaching background which helps you communicate it. So thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share, please write a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Press the button.
Thanks, everyone.